Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to look at personal productivity in a totally different way. Forget just working harder. We're going to treat productivity like a system, a machine that has rules, that has limits, and most importantly, has very specific ways it can break down. So, here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll look at the simple productivity model that most of us just kind of follow automatically. Then, we'll dig into the one big rule that controls the whole thing. After that, we'll see exactly where the system fails, learn how to spot the warning signs, and finally, we'll put together a framework to actually manage it all. Okay, let's start with section 1, the productivity equation. Before we can start tweaking the system, we really need to understand what it is we're working with, the default settings that most of us are running on without even thinking about it. At its core, this is the equation we're all taught. More hours in equals more growth out. It's this very simple, very intuitive idea that our success is a straight line. The more time we invest, the more we get back. It makes sense on the surface, doesn't it? And this isn't just some fuzzy idea. It's a real business strategy for a lot of people. I mean, the data is pretty clear. Roughly 3/4 of business owners are running their companies with the belief that this simple hours for growth equation is the key to success. But here is the massive flaw in that thinking. This system isn't a magic box that can take infinite input. No, it's governed by very real constraints that don't just bend the equation a little bit. They eventually break it entirely. Which brings us right to section 2, the law of returns. To really get why that more hours idea falls apart, we have to look at this fundamental principle that shows how the system actually works when you put it under stress. And that principle is the law of diminishing returns. You can think of it as the main rule for your personal output system. Basically, it says there's a tipping point, and once you cross it, adding more of the same thing, in this case, more work hours, actually starts giving you less and less back. And you know what's wild? Research has actually put a number on this for knowledge workers. They call it the 50-hour cliff. It's the point where your productivity system doesn't just slow down, it starts to fall apart fast. Now, just look at what this looks like with real numbers. This is honestly kind of shocking. The total amount of stuff you get done in a 70-hour work week is almost exactly the same as what you get done in a 56-hour week. Let that sink in. What does that actually mean? It means a full 14 hours every single week are just gone. They produce nothing. It's pure system waste. That's almost 2 full work days of your life that you're putting in for literally 0 extra output. And it gets worse. The system doesn't just hit a plateau. It can actually go backwards into what's called negative returns. This is the point where every extra hour you work actively reduces your total output. You're not just wasting time, you're making things worse. So that brings us to section 3. We know the system breaks, but how does it break? What's the mechanical failure that's happening inside our brains when we push things too far? Well, the main point of failure is something called decision fatigue. Think of your decision-making ability like a muscle or a battery. Every single choice you make drains it a little bit. When it's empty, the very tools you need for high-quality work, like good judgment and creativity, just stop working correctly. And you can see this breakdown across the board. Your creativity takes a hit. Your ability to solve complex problems goes down. You start making bad calls on risk, either avoiding it when you shouldn't or making reckless, impulsive choices. The quality of your thinking just tanks. So this cognitive breakdown kicks off a really nasty feedback loop. Let's walk through it. It all starts with the obvious result of an overworked system. You start making more mistakes. Now, those mistakes don't just disappear, right? They create new work, unplanned work. You now have to spend time and energy fixing things that you broke instead of building new things. And that's what seals the deal. The rework created by the fatigue forces you to put in, you guessed it, more hours, which only makes you more overworked, which creates more fatigue and more errors. It's a vicious cycle where working more literally causes the need for more work. Okay, on to section 4, threshold indicators. So, knowing how dangerous this is, how can we tell when we're getting close to that cliff? The good news is, a system under this much stress starts sending out some pretty clear warning signals. You just have to know how to read them. There are 4 big red flags to watch for. First, your key metrics just stop moving, no matter how hard you push. Second, you get strategic blindness. You're super busy, but you're not making progress on what really matters. Third is the manager's paradox, which is a real trip. And fourth, you just start to feel burnt out and disconnected. And that third flag, the manager's paradox, this quote nails it. A study found that when employees worked insane hours, like 80 hours a week, their extra output was so tiny, so close to zero, that their bosses literally couldn't tell who was working and who was just faking it. The effort became invisible because it wasn't producing anything real. That brings us to our last section, a framework for leverage. We've taken the system apart. We've looked at its rules, its limits, and how it fails. So now we can finally talk about a smart, logical way to optimize it and get the most out of it. And it's actually a pretty straightforward 3-step process. Step 1, you have to measure. Track your time and your results to figure out where your personal 50-hour cliff is. Step 2, you cap your hours. You set a hard limit and you stick to it. And step 3, you reallocate. You take those newly protected focused hours and aim them only at the most important, highest impact tasks. And that third step, reallocate, it's all based on the Pareto principle, which you probably know as the 80-20 rule. The idea is that for most things, a tiny fraction of your effort, about 20%, is creating the vast majority of your results. The whole point of capping your hours is to force yourself to identify and work only on that critical 20%. So we'll end on this question, which really gets to the heart of it all. Is all your effort actually an input that's creating growth, or is it just a symptom that your system is broken? The big idea here is to completely reframe how you think about work. Stop seeing long hours as a sign of dedication and start seeing them as an input into a system you can measure, that you can understand, and that you can optimize for what really matters, results.